For most people, death row marks the end of the line. It is the place where the justice system holds those it has deemed responsible for the most terrible crimes, and where escape is, by design, impossible. Yet throughout modern history, a select few have attempted, and sometimes succeeded, in breaking free from the very last stop before execution. Their stories reveal ingenuity, cruelty, desperation, injustice, opportunity, and sometimes the outright failure of correctional systems. Tonight, we explore the lives behind these escapes, the crimes that condemned them, the prisons that held them, and the moments when they chose to risk everything, even their lives, to slip the noose of the state. On May 31, 1984, the Mecklenburg Correctional Center in Virginia witnessed what no American prison official thought possible: a coordinated escape of 6 condemned men from state death row. At the center of the plan were 2 siblings whose very names had once terrorized Richmond: Linwood and James Briley. Years earlier, the Briley brothers, along with their younger brother and an accomplice, had carried out a string of brutal home invasions and murders across the city. Their crimes were not only violent, but shockingly random. They killed families, elderly couples, teenagers, anyone unfortunate enough to be chosen. In one case, they set a couple's house on fire after robbing and murdering them. In another, they abducted a 17-year-old girl, assaulted her, and shot her to death. The Brileys' violence made them national news. Their trial made them infamous. Their sentence, death, made them a symbol of justice. But prison walls were not enough to contain them. Inside Mecklenburg, the brothers gathered a group of equally dangerous men: Derek Peterson, Earl Clanton Jr., Willie Leroy Jones, and Lem Tuggle. Each had their own dark past. Murders during robberies, kidnappings, assaults. Every one of them was waiting to be executed. The plan they formed was astonishing. They studied guard schedules and shifts. They observed how food carts moved through the halls, and they identified one weakness: the human tendency toward routine. On the evening of the escape, the 6 inmates overpowered guards, tied them up, and took their uniforms. They then staged a fake maintenance operation, claiming to be escorting a bomb, really a TV wrapped in sheets, out of the prison for disposal. They loaded it into a van, bluffed their way past multiple layers of security, and drove straight out of the death row compound. The largest death row escape in American history was complete. Freedom wouldn't last. Over the next 20 days, all 6 were captured. Some were found hiding in stolen vehicles. Others tried to flee across state borders. Eventually, the Briley brothers were executed for their crimes. But the psychological shock of their escape changed Virginia's prison system forever. It forced the entire country to question how 6 condemned murderers could simply walk out of a fortress built specifically to stop exactly that from happening. Just 4 years earlier, in July of 1980, another death row breakout occurred, one almost surreal in its ending. Troy Leon Gregg had been convicted for a robbery murder committed with an accomplice while hitchhiking in Georgia. Gregg maintained his innocence, though the evidence against him was strong. What made Gregg notable wasn't only his crime, it was his place in legal history. His case, Gregg versus Georgia, re-established the constitutionality of the death penalty in the United States after a 4-year nationwide halt. After the Supreme Court upheld his sentence, Gregg returned to Georgia's death row with no remaining appeals. But Gregg was quietly working on something else: an escape. Along with 3 other condemned inmates, Timothy McCorquodale, Johnny Johnson, and David Gurule, Gregg smuggled hacksaw blades into their cells. Night after night, the 4 men cut through the bars of their windows. They dye-stained their prison clothing to resemble guard jackets. Timing their movements with the changing shifts, they pried open the window frame, slipped out, and vanished into the humid southern night. By morning, the Georgia State Prison in Reedsville had a crisis on its hands. 4 men, all condemned to die, were missing. The other 3 were recaptured quickly. They had holed up in a North Carolina house, still wearing their makeshift disguises. Gregg, however, made it farther. For a short window of time, he was free. The first man in modern Georgia history to escape death row completely. But fate caught up in a grimly ironic way. Gregg made his way to a biker bar. Witnesses later reported he got into an argument, possibly over money, possibly over the terms of a ride from the state. Whatever the cause, the fight escalated. By morning, Gregg was found dead, beaten to death by the very people he had turned to for help. A man who had escaped execution died on the same night he won his freedom, killed not by the state, but by strangers. Two of the other escapees later had their death sentences overturned due to issues in their original trials. Gregg, the only one to escape longer than a few hours, never lived long enough to learn that. In November of 1998, the Ellis Unit in Huntsville, Texas housed more than 400 death row inmates. Texas had a reputation: strict, controlled, unforgiving. For a condemned man, Ellis was said to be escape-proof. But one inmate was determined to test that belief. Martin Edward Gurule had been convicted of killing 2 people during a restaurant robbery. After failed appeals, he spent years on death row. Years filled with attempts to study guard behavior, understand layout, and exploit weaknesses. On Thanksgiving night, Gurule and 6 other death row inmates placed dummies in their beds, made from hidden blankets and pillows. Then, with a makeshift tool, they cut through an interior fence and climbed onto the roof. Under the darkness of the Texas sky, they ran across the rooftops, trying to navigate to the perimeter. Then came the moment that prison officials considered impossible. Gurule jumped. Not just one razor wire fence, but 2. Shots rang out. The guards fired from the tower. The other 6 men froze, terrified, and surrendered. But Gurule, already bleeding, disappeared into the trees. The next day, bloodhounds were brought in. Hundreds searched the area, yet there was no trace. Days passed. Rumors spread. Had a condemned man actually escaped the Ellis Unit? Had he outrun the dogs? Reached a city? Fled the state? A week later, the truth surfaced. Gurule's body was found in a creek near the prison grounds. He had made it over the fences, the only man in Texas death row history to ever do so, but he had drowned while trying to hide from the guards. His escape sent shockwaves through Texas. It ended many of the inmate privileges that had existed quietly for decades, and it resulted in the eventual transfer of the entire death row population to a much more restrictive facility, the Polunsky Unit, where inmates today live in near total isolation. Gurule changed the system forever, even though he never made it out alive. In the mid-1990s, Louisiana death row held one of its most notorious inmates, Leslie Dale Martin. Martin had been convicted of the kidnapping, rape, and murder of a 19-year-old college student, a crime so brutal that even hardened officers described the details as haunting. Before that, Martin had already served time for another assault, one involving his own sibling. His criminal history showed instability, violence, and a long pattern of predatory behavior. In 1999, Martin decided he would not be executed. But unlike other escapees on this list, he didn't plan to run alone. Martin gathered a group of condemned inmates with one shared goal: to breach the walls of Angola Prison, one of the toughest in the world. With the help of a corrupt guard, allegedly bribed to smuggle in hacksaw blades, the group began cutting their way toward freedom. They worked slowly, patiently, shaving down metal bit by bit. They cut the bars to their cells. They cut a window. They tested the timing of security lights. Finally, one night, they made their attempt. 2 miles from the prison perimeter, officers discovered movement. A team of escapees, armed with the crude tools of their breakout, sprinted toward the thick Louisiana woods. They were caught, but only just. The aftermath shook the prison. 2 officers were fired. 2 more were demoted. The warden admitted publicly that the group had come dangerously close to getting away. Martin never tried again. 3 years later, in 2002, he was executed by lethal injection. Most death row escapes involve a small number of inmates working in secret. But in March of 1994, Algeria witnessed something vastly different: a full-scale assault on a prison designed to free inmates, including hundreds condemned to die. Tazoult Prison, located in the Ors Mountains, held political prisoners, violent offenders, rebels, and death row inmates. During the Algerian Civil War, the facility became a symbol of state repression. On March 10th, militants stormed the prison in a coordinated operation involving weapons, explosives, and insiders. Guards were overwhelmed. Gates were blown open. When the chaos ended, an estimated 1,000 to 1,200 inmates had fled into the surrounding mountains. Among them were believed to be up to 280 prisoners waiting for execution. Unlike the American escapes, this one wasn't about individual planning. It was about military-level organization, a deliberate attempt to destabilize the state by releasing its most dangerous captives. Only a small portion were ever recaptured. Many joined armed groups. Some fled into neighboring countries. The escape changed the region for years and remains one of the largest prison breaks in modern history. In the modern era, death row conditions have become increasingly restrictive. Constant surveillance, limited movement, reinforced cells, single inmate housing, more cameras, fewer blind spots, electronic doors, motion detectors, mandatory isolation. Yet despite these measures, escapes still occasionally occur, even if they fail. What drives these men? For some, it's pure denial, the belief that somehow, some way, the sentence will never happen. For others, it's desperation, the fear of the exact date and time their life will end. For a few, escape is simply the final act of rebellion against a world they long ago rejected. And in rare cases, it's because they believe the system got it wrong. Whatever the reason, every escape tells the story of the prison that tried and failed to contain them. These escapes show the extremes of human behavior. The Briley brothers demonstrated organizational precision and ruthless intent. Troy Leon Gregg embodied tragic irony. A man who legally reshaped the death penalty died the night he escaped it. Martin Gurule proved that even the strictest prison systems can have unseen cracks. Leslie Dale Martin showed how corruption inside a facility can be more dangerous than anything outside its walls. And the Tazoult escape revealed how political conflict can turn even a high-security prison into a battlefield. Each case exposes a flaw in a system, a structure, a guard, a moment. Each reminds us that even those condemned to die still search for a way out, right up until their last breath. Escaping death row is almost never successful. In many cases, escapees die before they reach true freedom. Others are caught quickly, their remaining appeals damaged by the attempt. A rare few vanish into the world, never to be seen again, though such cases are nearly impossible to confirm. But the stories remain. They are part of the dark mythology of the criminal justice system, reminders that even a condemned prisoner can challenge the boundaries placed around them. These escapes are not tales of heroism. They are windows into the minds of people facing the ultimate punishment, and into the prisons designed to hold them. They show us what it means to confront the end, and what some will do to outrun it. If you would like to see more content like this, like and subscribe.